Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our sixth episode of Chronicles. Today we have myself, Maxim, Dennis, and Giovanni, as usually, and we also have our great guests, Alexandro and Dan. Hi, guys.
And I want to introduce the star of this episode, and this Dan Christian Bogosh, and it is very well known in all our conferences, and his masterpiece is called CGRateS, and is known to be the premier rating, billing, anti-fraud engine that we all know CGRate in the industry. And I will just add for maybe someone that has getting on the hurt just yesterday that CGRate a set, a very complete tool set written in Go that you embed and intertwine at low level, so able to scale very, very far, and is able to give you multiple tiers, capability to know um, how much the trend are different from before, and all these kind of advanced things that you can request to rating, billing, and anti-fraud. But maybe Dan, you want introduce a little bit, and then tell us what will be particularly this episode about.
Okay, so hello guys. Many thanks for having us here. Giovanni, many thanks for wonderful introduction. I would say I'm not the star. CGRateS is the star. We are just other contributors to the main star. So especially that lately I'm hardly doing any work. I'm mostly doing words around the project. So I'm the guy sitting doing nothing, and my colleague taking all the hard part. But yeah, someone has to enjoy life also.
That means that you built very well, so the things
Yeah,
go.
yeah, but this is kind of the dirty work, which I'm not excited to do it, but someone has to do it, as I said.
Nobody does. Nobody
Yeah.
does. I hear that.
So yeah, I would start with the fact that yeah, CGRateS is started actually as a simple idea of doing rating and prepaid billing. So this was actually in 2010. I had a good customer
Oh,
and friend
it's
who was,
actually 10 year that you're developing
yeah,
this.
can you believe that? We were
Wow,
kind of in
we're
the,
getting old, man. We're
I feel
getting
the same.
old.
Like I agree. I'm getting old. My children are now 10 years old as well. So Um, so it all started out of the need of one of our customers. We used to build SIP platforms, and by that I understand all this famous software with Kamailio and like famous SIR before, and then OpenSIR, and then Kamailio OpenSIPs, especially RTP proxy installations, SEMS, Asterix integration. So we started actually with small PBXs, and then we evolved towards medium and large platforms, doing like system integration for these things. And then when the hip came with the virtual PBXs, sometimes in 2007, we started building this like scalable virtual PBXs. Of course, FreeSwitch was also one of the main components we were using, and everything was fitting perfectly up to the billing component. So we could not find a billing which was really suitable to be pluggable with all these components. We had by that time a CDR tool, if you know it from OpenShips community, from Adrian Georgescu, which was quite as a model to us how you should do it via communicating over socket with a billing engine. And this billing engine should cache as much as possible and do its best in order to build up the speed. But like Adrian was saying, he didn't target more than 5 to 10 simultaneous calls. So by having this problem, then we tried to look more, but we could not find. Of course, if you wanted to have an OCS, it was costing quite some serious amounts of money, and this was not really easy to go with open source, because when we were chosen to deliver platforms, we were choosing because we were cheap. That was the only real fact. Everybody was saying, yeah, open source is the best, is the most performant, and so on. Cisco is using whatever using, but in the end they all came because it was cheap. So adding to the cheap part something which is very expensive, it was not really part of the compatibility. So we decided then, okay, then it's the time that we make ourselves dirty and we start building something our own. Of course, we had no clue about what it needs to be done, because I think even the people doing OCS, they have no clue about what it needs to be done. They just have to do it, and then they start with something like MySQL and PHP, because this is how all the billing evolved, and then stored procedure, and they overload the system even more, and then at some point they say, oh, we cannot make it faster, then what to do? And then they start putting C daemons to make it faster, and this is actually part of the story. So we started with no clue of what we are doing, but we had this feeling from CDR tool about a daemon. So then we thought, I was having a very good friend of mine who I started with the project. He was a colleague of mine from studying time, and he was quite talented in languages, in programming languages. And then he came to me and he said, there is this new language from Google, which is called Go, and it is not yet stable, so it was weekly release. By the time we have chosen it, starting a billing engine in an unknown language, it was really something which it was characteristic for us. Why not? The amazing part was that our customer told us, here is your financing, do whatever you want because we trust you. We know you have delivered us already the virtual PBX platform. We are very happy. Actually, they started first with another architecture for their platform, and from beginning I told them, I do it for you, but you will change it because this is not right. And because of that, later he got more like he trusted more.
That's definitely the best way to build a partnership with a customer.
Yeah.
That's definitely, I mean, he will trust you forever, because I mean, you told him, okay, if you insist, I will do it.
Yeah.
But
but it's not right. And yeah, this kind of customers we love. Actually, the top customers, let's say top 5 of our customers, they never did a contract with us. We send them an offer, and as a commitment, we don't even need a signature. We just need them to pay the invoice which we send, and by that they agree to our offer. And that's the whole relationship. With the most complicated, the big companies, they have to send their teams of lawyers to us, which we never contact a lawyer, because we don't want to spend the money.
Trust the money.
Not yet.
Yeah,
not yet.
the small amounts of money, we don't want to trust it to someone else. So in the end, this is how it goes. It's a lot about trust. So what happened then in 2011, we started to move, having an architecture first, actually, because I heard, Maxim, you talking in the last SIP Chronicle of last week about Python and how good Python is. We started with Twisted with Python. So if you look on Softpedia, there should be an initial version of CGRateS written in Twisted. And this is how we started, actually.
Oh yeah.
And yeah,
It's actually, since you mentioned it, it's actually how we do our stuff in here. Actually, start with a Python for the last since the Go came around. Basically, start with Python and build stuff up, prototype, and then either it goes to C or or Go. So basically, we either extend it to have some performance critical C components, or it just goes to the Go,
yeah,
so to speak.
improve with C. So after realizing that, okay, we are kind of limiting by this global locking of Python, we then said, okay, can we do something about this? And then my colleague came up with the idea, let's use Go. Of course, both of us, we need to also learn the new language together with developing directly. The good part is that there was almost no libraries at the beginning. So we had to write everything. So from including, because we started with free switch support, we wrote the ESL library. This was the first library we needed to write. So we got better and better because we needed to do more and more work. So this is how the things in 2012, when we published the first sources, looked out. In the meantime, we also developed another platform, some sort of dynamic dial plan for free switch, also in Go by that time. So we started to be better and better. And by 2013, we also had a working version of CGRateS, and we presented at Camaillio World, which was the first Camaillio World ever. So it was quite a fantastic opportunity for us to present it there. And from there, I think 1 month after Camaillio World, or 2 months, because it was in May, 2 months after, we went to ClueCon in 2013, and then from there it was an avalanche. At beginning, we were still contracting for SIP, but I think 2014, 2015, we could not afford due to time anymore. So CGRateS became more and more important in our day-to-day business, and it was attracting more and more community and customers. So we were enjoying and doing what we love. So that's the whole history behind CGRateS. And yeah, then we started growing, and we are today 4 core developers full-time on the project, and we plan taking more. So it's I would say the things are, finally after 10 years, the things are becoming serious. We got also more accepted in larger networks and more serious operators, and we are quite excited about that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I would.
pretty good then. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
no problem. I would support this. This is also kind of my experience. This 10 years time frame is something also for anyone who's watching. Maybe if you really want to be successful, you need to plan for 5 to 10 years in order to get the fruits of your labor. Otherwise, if you're planning just something, especially in the open source area, that is like 2 or 3 years, you won't be happy. So
Yeah,
it's just.
and
Yep.
I agree. 10-year time frame is a real one. From one side, for having a platform that's mature, but from the other side, to have, the let's call them the economic part of it running, and you have built up your name, so corporation will trust you, and at the end of the day, is corporation that get the money.
yes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they are not changing their some lines of code in their web portal. When they change the billing, they change practically their heart, and the component responsible about getting the money. And they always say, what you build first at the car? Do you build the strong engine or the braking system? So they say it's wise to build the brakes first to
Yeah,
run it
yeah.
properly. And just since you mentioned about the 10 years, what I would say you need to add to the 10 years is the patience and the ability to always reinvent yourself. My colleagues, they know a lot. They know that many days we say how we do things. We say today we do in this way, tomorrow we'll see. And most of the time happens that we rewrite sometimes 5 times the same component until
Oh
we
yeah,
say,
yeah.
oh
You
my God,
end
it's
up
perfect.
doing something else
Yeah,
completely.
and that's
Like
also
I'll do this. Well, about your colleagues, introduce maybe Alexandru.
yes, I forgot, please, but I was about to do it. Alexandru, Alex is
Hi.
with me today.
Uh,
He's one of the core and most reliable developers. We have 4, and each of these it's more reliable than the other. So
Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, Alex.
uh,
How you got involved and what drives you in this
uh,
endeavor.
the first one that I meet Dan was from a friend. So the Theo, the other one that's a core development, uh, he introduced me to Dan. So when we were at the university, so from then I worked here. So
I think he's working now since 3 years with me, or 4 with
3 years
CGRateS.
in September. In September,
Okay.
is 3 years. So
That's a really nice milestones, and I remember when Dan was talking about you and your colleague at an OpenShips conference,
oh,
and I mean he was very proud of you, too.
thank you.
So yeah, so that's the a bit talking around the history. And lately, actually, we started rewriting like the finally the 5th time, and I hope the last, the component, the core components. And
No, you
today,
never ended. It's
no, I always say, no, it will be the last, we
like,
promise.
don't make an assumption.
But
You will rewrite it over and over.
yeah, the amazing part is that we feel this time, because we were playing with how it should everything run together, and now all the other components other than the original rating component, they already work with this new architecture, and we are very happy about it, and community is very happy about it.
But
So
I want to ask you a couple of questions that maybe they touch some not
sensitive.
public or not official things, but I mean you can manage to answer without commitment, just
Yes, of
being
course.
general.
Yeah.
And this, when let's say the average ITSP or the average Select or whatever contact you and tell you, okay, I have this PBX in the cloud, or I have this wholesale, and I want um, to have a CGRate as my engine, and I want you to build with me a basic rating billing, and how long it takes from when he contact you to when he begin to have the first production run, and how you structure your relationship with the customer, how it goes from I mean first call to for first production run.
Yeah, so I would say the steps are usually the first steps are pretty quick. So normally they do a feature list, which they are after. We analyze it, we see if we need to develop or not. Mostly we don't have to develop much because it's quite a comprehensive system we have already. But they I don't know how they have this. They all hit some corner cases which we could not estimate. So there is always some fine tuning to do. The big ones they understand easier. The small ones are picky, but the big ones, they know they are dealing with a large platform here, so they are ready also to have sometimes like deviation out of the appointments. But usually we have done like large networks in terms of a couple of months altogether. But the difficult part after implementation, it was the integration on their side, in their system. And this one, it can take up to normally up to 6 months.
And things like that.
Yeah, so I would say a more serious project like mobile MVNOs, I would say they should estimate 6 months for like until you give key ready system, turnkey solution. But there are various steps. I told you we move usually fast because we don't have to do much. But yeah, please go ahead then.
Yeah, and it's also always, or most of the times, it's also the bigger the customer is, the more ways they need to go internally for this project. So it also impacts the timeline. So I believe those 6 months are mostly or highly impacted by the internal discussions, internal agreements, internal integrations that are needed, and not by the CGRateS platform itself.
Yes, and
also, I mean, we know that just for opening the other side of a VPN, they maybe took, 2 or 3 weeks. So
yeah, but a funny part of this, it is not the longest which takes to implement a system, but to upgrade it. we have this experience that upgrading takes more than initial integration.
Yeah.
Interesting
So
point.
we have, to be honest, customers with full support, 24-hour support, which are running on very old version, and we are pushing them towards upgrading, and still they don't do it because it's too complex and too complicated on their side.
Well, on that end, sorry, Giovanni, go ahead.
No. I was just commenting that if not broken, don't fix it. So.
No, but it's not only that. Sometimes you need to break it, right, in order to fix it.
No,
but
it's also
what you're gonna do? But if you're using like something like external components, in the vendor or whatever project you're using is moves on to the new version. You need to move your customers. And that matter actually spoke pretty heavily with Dan Jenkins on that end on his ComCon UK. Hey Dan, he's actually on the chats.
Hey Dan.
We love you.
Yeah, but it also involves, I can understand Dan, because providing support for some legacy system that is running takes resources from the new development and supporting the newest version. So I can understand your motivation to move the customer into supporting the latest. Yeah. But it's also, being a service provider myself, I also know that as long as it's running, you don't want to mess with it. So it's this balance, this delicate balance.
Yeah, it's not only balance, but it's also about the process of how you do upgrade from one version to another. Anyway, okay. Then let's maybe go to the presentation. You said you have some slides.
So I wanted to reach there. So because we started heavily rewriting, and we had actually our first stable release this year because people were still pushing, because we are doing a lot of developing, rewrites, redesign on the fly. And of course, customers are protected because we interact directly with them, but community felt a bit irritated about keep changing on every commit and incompatible between commits and so on. So we said, okay, we do a stable for you with dedication. So in January or starting of February this year, we did our first stable, and now we move on master, like with our new ideas and our new refactoring. So today my talk was also about what we have new in master compared to the first stable, because the stable everybody knows. So this is why my talk today is a bit focused on that. If you have any questions on the if you missed my previous talks, please feel free to interrupt me anytime, and I'll explain you if there are components which are but I also have a few slides about the current architecture, so you understand what we are doing.
Perfect.
Okay, let me just.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. There is a catch in my presentation, and the idea I love it from Max. I think Max wrote it by mistake, the Go, in some tweet or something, and I loved it because in the end it's CGRateS and Go in this talk. So you were very.
Well, it's the best way. It's the best way, you know, when things happen.
The reason why I define this talk as Go SIP is because we have also added SIP interface within CGRateS. So now we interact with SIP servers directly on SIP if necessary. But it doesn't mean that we are going towards SIP server development. We only handle SIP redirects and that's it. And I don't think we will ever, let's say not ever, but I don't have any plans into integrating full SIP server because they are so amazing SIP servers out there and SIP applications. And here to mention Camellia, OpenSIPs, FreeSwitch, Asterix, Drachio from your last talk. So they are all amazing software. Good. So the company, it was started in 2007, and we have dealt with both. The most important part is that we have dealt with both wholesale and retail business. And this is how this experience we got in both wholesale and retail, we put it into CGRateS to be compatible with both industries. CGRateS is a real-time enterprise billing suite. This is how we call it. Enterprise because it's fully configurable, and it's a suite of services. So you will find that we have quite an amount of components inside. And of course, billing because it was centered on billing. We are by nature an OCS. CGRateS itself, the name came from carrier grade rating service. So it was real-time rating solution. Now, when we started OCS term, it was not that famous, but lately everybody understands like a real-time prepaid and OCS. So we talk now the language which is the most used out there, because this is also the language which pays the money. If you say real-time prepaid, they don't pay that much. Like you say OCS. OCS should be expensive by default. It's designed to be pluggable into existing infrastructure, so we are not intrusive. We say we listen on events, we communicate with the switch. You don't have to like route your calls through us. So this is also important. This SIP interface, it doesn't mean that you can send us the call and we forward it to the next party. We don't support that. We don't know how to do dialogues. We don't know how to initiate invites and so on. So we are completely out of this topic. And we are also ready to accommodate new components by the way or through the way we have designed the system. It's an open source software. As I told you, it was born in 2010. First sources published in 2012 on GitHub. All the sources, all the software we have, it's available on GitHub. We now support both release branches and master, and both are considered stable. So if someone says that they are on master and they complain about some bugs, we treat the master like being stable. We have master in production at some customer sites. No add-ons in private repositories. We don't like to do that. We are kind of being afraid about doing add-ons in private repositories. It's like firewall. It's the most secure firewall was the OpenBSD because it was open. This is what in our mind. It's in our minds. And we have consideration for community contributions. Community helped us a lot with ideas, with heavy testing, with 24-hour support, sometimes answering on our Google group, and we appreciate them. We love them. Performance-oriented software. It has some advanced caching system completely developed by us. I'm saying completely developed by us. It's important because we are responsible about the problems which can occur or about optimizations and so on. So this is why we wrote as much as possible ourselves. The complete software is asynchronous. We have these micro threads of Golang, Go routines, if you are familiar with Go. I don't know who is not these days because it became so popular, mostly also due to Docker. And we are test-driven development software. I think we have even more than 7,000 tests today. We feel like every time we write a feature without tests, we feel very insecure because this guarantees us that we will be backwards compatible and we will have as less regression as possible when we introduce a new feature.
Question for you then. What are you using for your testing? Those 7,000 tests. What are you running? Which platform?
So since we have a lot of unit tests and we started early, we are still on Travis. So Travis checks our GitHub. You see the badge there, and we make sure that this badge is always green. And outside of that, we run integration tests by ourselves. We have scripts, and we run them with our own scripts. We still plan going on some more advanced like Jenkins or something, but we always say we will do it, but since this one is works is like what works never.
Yeah. Well, Jenkins is about the same, I guess. What about coverage report? Do you run something your code? Because what I found is basically whenever you implement like automated tests, you should definitely pair it up with the coverage report. Otherwise, you kind of in the dark of what you're actually tested. So
yes, we are currently working on improving our coverage report. Alex knows that. I don't know. Right now, we have some parts which are close to 90%, but some parts which are maybe still at 60% because it's very hard to have high coverage.
Yeah. But what are you using for coverage? Which system?
You use Go cover. So the Go unit.
Is it integrated with the GitHub?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Go tool, the Go compiler has this available.
But I mean, do you have like a web interface around it, or is it just?
No, you write Go cover and then it gives you reports on that. I think there are some badges which you can add on GitHub, but since we are not there close to 90%, we were not in a hurry to add the badges on our
Well, I mean,
let's say we didn't find the time for it.
You need to shame yourself. You're like,
yeah, a bit, yes. But there is another catch. The coverage it's taken on the unit test, but the integration test is usually taking the application functionality, which covers more than the actual coverage tests are saying, because the integration tests are not like inspected by the coverage. So,
but I think in the modern tools you can glue and combine results of different kinds of tests. At least if you guys have not used it before, but I really recommend there is a system called Coveralls, and it's actually free for the open source projects.
Okay.
Basically, it integrates with the GitHub very well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually have multiple jobs contributing to the same coverage report. So you can have like your normal run and your integration run or whatever your glitching run.
Yeah, I see that very good percentage, like 91%. It's an
Oh, it's
impressive
been like
percentage.
3 years. I mean, if you look at
Max,
the
Max is the guru of the coverage. But please, Dan, go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, so we do have something like 260,000 lines of code today. So that in itself, it's not easy to.
That figure?
260,000 lines of code in Go, which is the
Wow.
compressed language.
Is
So
a
that
fifth
in
of
itself,
a million.
yeah,
Wow.
that in itself, it's quite some challenge to have coverage of 90%. So this is just for you to see our seriousness of development over time. So you see that yeah,
But
here in
maybe
2000.
you want to share back your screen.
Oh,
it's already shared, I think.
You need to
sorry.
switch in the participants list.
Okay.
Then there's an additional participant. Yeah.
Resume. Do you see that now?
Yeah, now it's perfect.
Okay, so in 2012 when we pushed it, the initial one, and then 2013 after Camaillio World, we started being more serious. And you see here the changes in terms of lines of code, whether there are deletions, additions, and so on. And you see that lately we are quite peaking in terms of adding, removing, and activity on the code. And also that can be also seen, like even in 2016, the commits were still serious, but we didn't, maybe we were out working more on the bug fixing than the real sources, because the commits were still high in terms of commits per month. We have an average like 120, 140 commits a month, which is again a lot of activity. We have reached recently, or we went more than 10,000 commits overall for the system, which for a like so young project like us, it's quite an achievement. We are still not that established like other projects like Camaillio, OpenShips, and so on.
Well, you're still a baby.
Or FreeSwitch, yeah.
And now to the future. Go to the future.
Yeah. So it's a modular architecture, cloud ready, microservices, all this fancy stuff which goes around today. It's easy to enhance by rewriting specific components. If you don't agree to our licensing, you can rewrite a specific component, and then by doing that, you can make the system your own and make sure that nobody else is copying it, or the sensitive parts are protected. It's an online or offline charging system, multi-tenant from day one, real-time configuration reloads, so you can send API calls without restarting the engine. Oops, sorry. What did I do? I touched my keyboard. You see that, right? You see the slides again. Okay, sorry about that. Rating engine with all this fancy derived charging, which is able to rate the same event multiple times, so you know your supplier versus your distributor costs and so on, all in one. Account balances management with bundles. This is good for mobile operations and part of OCS. Session or event charging with balance reservation and refunds. Here in account balances, we have unlimited number of balances, so per destination, per region, per whatever you want, and failover within the same call between them. CDR logging with support for interim records and rating queues. These rating queues are nice because we receive the CDR as event from the switch in real time. We rate it, and then we forward it to you as next step. So within milliseconds, you get the CDR like coming from your switch already rated. And this is also plug and play into billings, because they don't have to do much integration. They can use their billing system, existing billing system, and add OCS in the middle without even noticing it. All you need is to write a daemon which receives our events and pushes towards their existing billing database or billing system. Fraud detection, as you said, with automatic mitigation, reactions, and so on. LCR for routing with quality-based LCR and bundles. Call statistics with pattern monitoring. We have in-memory call statistics, so you can see all the time ACD, ASR, PDD, all these RTP statistics in real time, so you can react on them. All this, they all came as natural addition for what we were trying to achieve as an OCS and router. For interfaces, we have a diameter, we have radius, we have DNS for Enum. So we also are an Enum server for routing or number portability. And we recently introduced SIP server with process templates. All these agents are standard agnostic because they are programmable through the use of some special interfaces. Max, you want
Great.
to...
Yeah, actually interested about that SIP part. You said it's something new that you introduced. So maybe let's, if you can talk a little bit about more about this.
We have a demo even. Alex is here to provide a demo.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
I would also suppose let's then finish with the presentation, and then we will dive into the SIP stuff, because I'm also very interested in that as well.
Yeah. And then we have built-in high availability and dynamic partitioning support. We have a daemon named Dispatcher, which is able to do you clouds and clouds of CGRateS, which is what the big operators are after. This is the set of our components. All of these are separate components, and all of these are separate daemons. So you can put them in your network in each inside their own Docker container if you like to, and or the amazing part is that we have made it also that they work in process, so they can communicate between them over RPC, or they can communicate in process. In process, of course, to speed up things. It will never be the same whether you go a few milliseconds over the network or a few nanoseconds inside the same process. So it's all about designing your system. We see here our interfacing on the left side, including here FreeSwitch, Camaillio, OpenShips. They have their own module developed, which works natively there with CGRateS, Asterix agent, and some generic HTTP agent where you can do translation between REST and CGRateS JSON. Event reader, which can process any kind of CSV, JSON, XML, fixed width files, so you can feed CDRs which you are getting from your providers. Rating component, CDR component, attributes, which is a in-memory database. This is good for mediation. It can add, remove, alter things within your events. All this in real time. Chargers to do this derived charging for multiplying your sessions, your events into multiple things in order to charge them differently, like supplier versus distributor versus customer. Routes, which is the component which does the LCR resources to limit, like number of CPSs or whatever resources, number of channels for specific destination which you want. They are all virtual, so they are fast. Stats, I told you to do real-time statistic. Thresholds is for monitoring your full events and various components. This is also the core component for doing fraud detection. Filters, like a generic filter mechanism, it can do a large range of filtering, including taking decisions for your data based on quality or based on the resources used and so on. So it's quite advanced. Dispatchers for, I told you, for high availability. Schedulers, we have our own cron tab built in CGRateS for this automatic subscriptions for online charging. EES is a new component, which is the mirror of the event reader service. This is for exporting the events out. We used to have here a CDR exporter, but now we can do any kind of events from here exported out. API server, a loader component for generic and automatic data fed in. Two types of database for operations as well as storage, and our cache instance. So these components are today part of this 260,000 lines of code. So we made it to SIP agent. I was trying to be as quick as possible. We said that it's only taking 15 minutes to take the slides, but it's not. It's never
okay.
that way.
It's okay, as long as there is people.
Yeah.
To watch us.
So regarding the SIP endpoint, what we did was taking a SIP parser written in Go, and we developed our own SIP server. So we have support for UDP, TCP, and in theory TLS. We never tested TLS, but UDP and TCP should work fine. The SIP agent is programmable as the others via these processor templates, which my colleague will show you about. We are limiting our SIP agent to 302 redirects. Applications for this, we came up also with some new approach compared to the traditional 302 redirects. So you can do call authorization. And by doing this, you also involve the authorization of at the billing side, at the OCS side. And when you receive the invite, you can do prepaid control, and you can also do steer authenticate, because we are also, it's a new trend, this steer shaking.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, you can now use it directly with SIP 302 redirect. The 302 redirect will return you error if your steer is not correctly, or if your steer does not properly authenticate your CLI. Also, it will reject you if you don't have enough balance in your account. So it's integrated with OCS. You can do call routing, of course, LCR. You can do supplier selection by returning different contacts. And you can do in parallel or serialized, like, free switch, for example, is using whether you're adding comma or semicolon between your contacts or different contacts headers. You can also influence the call parameters via this. So you can return a max duration to the call as part of the contact URI params. So they can enforce later the maximum duration. So it's almost like a pseudo prepaid integration via the SIP interface. If you're using an open source component, you are already good to go, because we have support for most of them. But if you're coming with a platform which is closed source and you don't have direct integration with CGRateS, you can use already redirects to already have a support and a protection, sometimes fraud protection. So you make sure that
I got a question for you then.
please.
What are you using for handling the SIP part of your new feature?
It's a SIP library in Go.
Oh, okay. So
it's
like
a SIP
particular library, or is it something you built?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Is it some particular library, or is it something you built?
It's a library. Out of that library, we have taken only the SIP parser, and the rest we have built it by ourselves. In Go, this is quite easy, and so what we have added.
Library? What library did you use? Was the SIP
Alex, what's the name of it? We have forked it and renamed it, actually.
The initial library had some example with SQL, so we just needed the parse. So that's why we take it and fork it and then rename it for us. And
now Sipping Go is the name at CGRateS repository if you want to use it.
Okay. No,
But
we
it's
have
very
our own
basic.
zip code. I'm just curious, what did you use?
We try few of them, and some of them they were too big, like they were a full-blown SIP server, and we didn't want that. So we just wanted the parser, because when you are just parsing the invites and rejecting everything else, then you don't need like a heavy library.
Oh yeah. Definitely don't. All right.
Yeah. So then, as part of call parameters, I told you we can return max duration, call max duration. We can return steer initiate header. So by doing this, any platform which is today using SIP and send us the SIP can receive back in the redirect the steer initiate, and they have now steer, shake, and support already. That's all it takes. And then maybe you want to do CLI manipulation or destination formatting. Of course, for these two, destination formatting is plug and play because of the context, but for CLI, you will still need some help from the original switch, so it can parse. But we have tested, for example, with FreeSwitch, you have its own dial plan for redirects, and it's simply to reparse there, or Kamailio OpenSIPs, it's the same story. You process it in the fail branch or something.
Oh yeah. No, it's totally cool. And
destination
really cool.
formatting for number portability. We support. We have products based on number portability running here with LCR. In Europe, we have one with like 30 million numbers active, which works also as OCS in real time. And parsing them and giving reply back, it's always constant, and I think 7-8 milliseconds altogether for the reply queries for the answers. So it's like a stable product already, the number portability. And emergency services, if you want to map the numbers to contact centers of emergency services, it's also possible via the SIP agent.
Dan, could you explain a little bit more regarding the emergency services, because I
was just about to speak up.
Yes. So,
what do you mean?
what we have done in the past was you receive the location of your customer, or he updates it online, because these are normally they can be fixed if there is an ISP which integrates that, he knows the location of his customer, or you can detect it based on IP, or he can update it online, and then based on that, in the database the near contact center for the emergency service. So you will remap his 911 in US or 112 in Europe to a fixed number where the contact center relies in emergency services.
Oh, so it's basically a mapping from a short number for it's like from a service number to the routing number, and those listed applications, they are based on this SIP interface, right?
It depends. People keep inventing standards and so on, but we work on like non-standard way. So we map the number to a contact center number, and that's it. And
I got it. But for example, this number portability, where you said that you have like 30 millions of numbers.
But not emergency, but number portability. Yes.
Is it based on the SIP?
No. You have the separate number portability, and whether you receive it via SIP or any other interface, it's again aliasing the number. So the number comes in, you detect whether it was ported or not. You extract actually also his ported numbers, but usually you extract his carrier ID, and the prices are defined per carrier and not longer per destination.
That's right.
So you will decide your LCR based on carrier cost and not anymore based on destination cost.
Understood.
Yeah, so that's about the C part. Stir shaken part, it's like standard feature set. We can check origination destination pair. You can configure the attestation level which you are interested about. I think they have like 4 attestation levels. We support both authenticate, this is for terminated calls, or initiate, for the calls which we initiate and send forward. We have tested so far with both Kamailio and OpenShips. We are interoperable with them. How standard is that? I cannot tell you, because you know that Stir Shaken, they say, is not yet really a standard implementation, but we are fully compatible to Kamailio and OpenShips.
Have you seen then any real life deployment of this Stir Shaking? Any responses from your
It's a good
customers?
question,
Because I
because I
haven't.
didn't see nobody.
Everybody is steering and shaking.
Yeah.
Nobody is implementing.
Everybody's doing it, but nobody in production. So it's still early stages.
Yeah, but there was also my understanding, but you have a greater exposure to the customers, so you haven't seen any real life.
No, and you know, we work with a pretty serious operator in US, and we have proposed them to use it, and it didn't raise their interest. So they are not interested about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, very interested, but they're not eager, I would say, probably.
Yeah, but that would be a question. Why did you implement it? Did you have a request from a customer, or what was your motivation to do it?
The motivation was that we saw that it's a native thing which needs to be done. You know, you don't know when the customer wakes up, but if you have it, you got the customer. If you don't have it, just because you didn't put any effort inside, it's not a big effort. It's a fancy sale, but it's not a big effort. It's just a mapping and playing with some certificates. They didn't reinvent anything via Stir Shaken. However, it's very cool. It sells well, Stir Shaken.
Yes, understood. And this is what was my motivation for this question, in order how to allocate resources for some functionalities, even if you don't have an exact demand from the customer base, that you still can foresee that it would be a good marketing move, or it would attract additional attention from the customers if you have it already, and it also would help to get this rolling, this whole Stir Shaken implementation. Or introduction, if there is already an implementation. So yeah, there's very good points from your side. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think it will pick up, because it's demanded by laws in North America. I think in Canada as well, right, Max? They are putting serious.
Oh yeah,
effort.
it's coming. But we'll see. I mean, with any like technologies that comes up, it's always this uncertainty, right? I mean, it could take off. It could just be something never really catches up. So, but at least we've heard some regulations here are mandating it to by the end of the year. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, definitely
and
the industry needs something like this. So yeah.
Yeah, well, at least in just a second, maybe from my side, at least I believe in US it might be a bigger issue, because from my personal experience, when I was on vacation with my friends, and they wouldn't pick up phone calls on the fixed line after like 6 p.m., because they say that normally this is the time when people come home and all the spam callers start to call, so they wouldn't bother to pick up any calls after 6 p.m. until, I don't know, 8 p.m. or something. And I've never experienced something like this in Germany. Maybe I received like 2 or 3 spam calls in my 20 years in Germany. So
I experienced it. So it starts being popular here as well. Microsoft is always calling me to fix my Windows, and I'm fully on Linux.
but it's still definitely a good way or good solution to have in place, even if you're not impacted by those issues at the moment. And we will see how it will get introduced in the US and in Canada, and learn from their experience.
Yeah, One more thing which has motivated us, since we have so many interfaces, to us it was a motivation because we made it like accessible from all the interfaces. So which means, especially because I heard on the SIP implementers mailing list, someone who wanted to quickly check steer shaken, and they wanted API based implementation, and we have made it to have also APIs for it. So both authentication and initiation, we have APIs for those. So you don't, it's not only from SIP, but now it's from everywhere. So you can access it via API.
Oh, that's a great way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. You have some questions, or we go to the demo so you understand how
let's
we
check the chats. I don't think we have any questions on chat, so
Maybe I can have one. Regarding the SIP interface, because I also asked this in the last Chronicles. We are using in our platform. We are quite heavily using the IFC interface. It's defined by the 3GPP, and we are looping. It basically what it does. It's you send an invite to an application server with a route header. And the first instance of the route header identifies the application server, and the second part of the route header routes the call back to the call control. So you kind of basically looping the call through. And if this would be possible theoretically to get implemented with the procedure, not only support the 300 redirect, but this looping through the application server.
But looping through us, you mean, or just no? This is what we say. We don't want to go there.
You don't want to. So exactly. So if we would want to do something like this, we would have to have the open SIPs doing the, and then have the open SIPs being the application server, and then have the integration with the CGRateS.
Yeah, open SIPs has a native module. So
understood.
Talking to CGRateS is just calling the right syntax or function within open SIPs. So I recommend open SIPs.
Yeah. Thanks.
Or Camilo, I choose never between them.
Yeah.
They're both rock solid and
great. Yeah. Great applications. Absolutely.
So Alex, over to you now. I can rest and drink some shots.
So for this demo, I only have a call, because that's all it is, a call from GC to FreeSwitch, and FreeSwitch communicates with CGRateS, and we rewrite the contact header. So for starters, let's make a call from 1 to 102. So let's see what's happened, and then I will explain the configs that I used. First, we get the call from GC to FreeSwitch, and there's some proxy magic here that's doing the authentication from FreeSwitch side. And then when the call starts, it is sent to CGRateS, and CGRateS populate the contact header here with information regarding the contact to route to. The information is from routes, so the least cost destination is first, and highest cost destination is last. And also for this example, we populate the X identity header with the steer identity. And then we see that the call is moving to the 103 here from instead of calling 101, it's calling 103. So let me show you.
So the redirect happened.
Yeah.
We overwrite the original destination, which was 1001. We overwrite it to 1003 and send it to another host.
Yeah.
And we can see this in the contact header that 103 are higher priority, right? Can you scroll a little bit?
Yeah.
So it has a Q value of 0.07 and
the Q value, I put it to the same for all here as in template. But the order is from the routes. So that's, I didn't get the right way to parse the parameters from contact header in FreeSwitch. So only the order that they are coming, I take in consideration here.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure.
Automatically parses contact based on comma.
Yeah.
And there is a logic in the FreeSwitch that the first contact will be treated as the most preferred, because I would assume that these Q values would be a regular way to signal the preference, right?
Yeah, but Q values are written by us, so we can put anything, including making them in order. There's no problem with that.
Understood. It's just you use this the easiest way to trigger the FreeSwitch, but this can be customized, and if other switch or other system is using Q values, this could be adjusted. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, you'll see in the templates. What I wanted to show you is you see there the CGR cost, so you know how much your call costs when you are sending to them, and also you know when your call should time out. For the moment is the value in nanoseconds, but we can cut it and make it in seconds. There's not a big deal. Go is using nanoseconds. And also you have their CGR route, so you know to add to your CDRs over which route you are going. So you can bill the call for both supplier as well as the customer. So you automatically know your revenue.
Question for you then. What is how many of those can you process on like average hardware or whatever, one core?
How many SIP you mean?
Yeah, how many of those messages?
We didn't test yet. I don't know, Alex, did you test something? But normally on a sessions environment, we are reaching about 1,000 calls per second. It's about the setups. And we have production system with 100 for a single rater with 100,000 simultaneous sessions as OCS. So it should be not any difference with SIP because they are all light. Yeah. It's not a heavy protocol like HTTP used to be or something. Or
and this expires 3,600 signals. Is this something you've been talking regarding the prepaid light?
No, so the max usage is the prepaid. The expires is something which we just copy to make it standard, but it should be when the contact expires or something. It's just we copy, the whole thing is programmable, as I told you. So you will see that we define this in our templates.
Yeah, Dan, I understood that. I'm just curious about this particular use case and
trying max to... usage. CGR max usage is about
and CGR max
duration.
Understood. And CGR max usage is something specific to the FreeSwitch. Please excuse my ignorance. Or
you can parse it in FreeSwitch. So you need to parse it in FreeSwitch and use this as timeout for your call.
Understood. So you're basically transparently transferring information from configurable platform CGRateS to configurable platform FreeSwitch, and then you can do whatever you need to on both sides. Yeah, that's good.
Yes, I think Giovanni will most surely recognize this language because this is the dial plan of FreeSwitch, and you see there where we set the max usage at line 24. We parse what we receive from the contacts, and we set it as execute on answer scheduled hangup in FreeSwitch.
Yeah, I see.
So it's about, as I told you, we are non-intrusive. We exchange information. If you use it or not is your deal.
Yeah.
Great.
So this is the plan for redirect, where how I was told we only take the information. And for the request templates for this one, we have defined
This is CGRateS config now.
Yeah. So we say that for any other method that's not invite, we return method not allowed for the first. So we tell that we do not support them. Then for invite, we send the event to the sessions to process it with the routes and to initialize the steer.
So these flags are CGRateS specific flags. Will tell something to the internal modules of CGRateS. Remember this architecture with sessions in the middle and SIP agent on site. This means SIP agent will contact sessions component and it will send these flags to sessions, and then sessions know what to do with the event, what are the tasks to do on event, which means extract or calculate the LCR, the routes. You need send back the steer initiate header, and then continue. You will see that we can also go and continue in other templates. It's a CGRateS specific configuration, this one. You need to learn it. After you learn it, that it comes like riding a bicycle. At the beginning, sounds scary, but it makes sense after.
Yeah.
Here we can see some configuration for steer. For example, we from here we can define the path to the public key and the private key for the.
We don't see that. Yeah, we see line 31.
Yeah. So for me, it's a path on the computer, but it can be also URL. So it's not limited to have it on the running machine. Okay. So after that, we receive the response from CGRateS and do some filtering. So we can see how many routes we have and populate the contact header with what we need.
The number of contact headers. So it's, you see, here are the parameters which you like. So you see, you can put the Q07 in the first route and Q08 in another route and so on. So, or one or whatever. It's fully configurable, also expires and so on.
Or you can populate them dynamically like we do with the CGRateS usage. You can hardcode it here or put it dynamically. So there's no limit here.
But the number of those contact headers is here somehow pre-configured?
No.
You decide how many you return back, because you see this at line 42, we apply a header which we say, if you have the number of routes higher than one, you see there is a filter,
I see it.
Mongo, greater or equal the number of routes higher than one, which means we already have at least one route, which means we populate the first contact header and then we continue down. So we add,
understood.
We add as many you like.
So it's triggered by the amount of the routes. So if there are 2 routes, there will be 2 headers. So it's all okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Or the amount of the routes you want to consider, because we can return 100 back, but you only want to consider the first 2.
Yeah.
So you add as many contacts as you like via these templates.
Also the identity, because with the route changing, we change the destination here. We can say to take the identity for, I don't know, for the first route or the last one and put it in the header. Because when we change the destination, we expect another identity. So that's why here we take from the first one, because we expect to choose the first contact as the right destination.
Yeah, maybe I make it more clear. So the first route ID will give us an ID, and we use this ID to select between all the identities, because we have multiple identities. So we can send per each supplier different identity based on what we want to control, the destination or the CLI. So because the destination will be different per supplier, same will be also the identity header different per supplier.
Yeah.
Got
Cool. Well, so how do you guys see your platform in like 10 years?
Yeah, it's a good plan. So what I see is that other people will work on it. No, I think it's I find it stable. So like from not that the platform is not stable, but the architecture should be mature. So we'll be working on it as much it takes to be perfect, because we are passionate about it, even if that makes or not money, because we didn't have this, we never had this issue whether it makes or not money. The issue was whether it does the things we like or not. So that was what motivated us in life. Otherwise we would have exited like others many years ago, or sold and enjoy life.
Yeah, and this flexibility of the platform is, I believe, the most of the, or a bigger part of the, especially deployment, is not only developing new features, but customizing, as we've discussed, those headers, templates, in order to fit this particular environment. And this could be a never-ending story, so you wouldn't get bored.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
And
Yes,
having a solid architecture really allows you to focus on those configuration, and it really reminds me the Camarillo or OpenZPS, where you have solid bases, but then everyone's doing what they want to do with all the scripting that is inside, and providing amazing features with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the end, this is what's driving the platform, because we are mostly paid for the project, not for the software. So we make the platform doing things easier for us, because we are the system integrators. So this is how this platform became so versatile, because we wanted to make it generic and to help us writing as less code as possible.
Especially as less code that is customer specific.
Yeah.
And this is something we've discussed with other guests on the show, is that how can you make a open source project sustainable? And this is some of the experience I'm having with other projects, that you really need to focus onto the integration part of the project, because people are, well, expect the open source to pay or to cost less or nothing, but they are not expecting to pay nothing for integration, for hours, for the job. So that's a very good way. And I believe like the giants like Red Hat or anyone in this business are really major amount of the revenue are coming from the integration projects, and not from just selling the product itself, because it's open source. There are also the other models, also some customer specific developments, obviously, but yeah, as an advice to other projects or someone who's looking and is interested in getting into the open source projects, is that the integration part is the bigger issue for it, and having the platform or products as flexible as possible would, as you said, would allow you to reuse the code and not do a new development for each and every product or each and every project that you would get involved.
Yeah. So just as an aside, let's say joke, we had a project in an exotic location in Tahiti. Wow. So there we have, by the way, the first tier 1 operator. I don't know if you can call it tier 1 on an island, but it's tier 1, and we are proud of that. And the funny experience which we had there is that I booked for myself like 2 weeks there, going there. It was going and integrating with a completely unknown platform provided by Nokia. I went there, and I enjoy most of the time, because the integration was taking me a few hours. So that was the fantastic part. And then all this time, Nokia could not believe it.
Supposed to be.
Yeah. And then the rest, I could enjoy Tahiti. So I saw islands around, and because I was asking my customer, can I do something else? No, it's working. What can we do more?
Well, but then if you get paid by hours, it might not be a very good
we
idea
charge per project. So
yeah,
we
exactly. So, yeah, exactly. Because
That's
otherwise it wouldn't make sense.
First rule, it's good for me and it's good for you. Pay
Yeah.
for project.
Exactly. So it's amazing by itself. This comes maybe back to the how long time it takes to implement a project. It's mostly on the other side, because you saw we have these templates, we do miracles, and they could not believe it, because by default diameter protocol, it's so complex and fancy, and interfaces and so on, and we have done it like, for us it's attribute and values. This is the most, you have mapping and then map in and map out, and that's it. So they say, well, it cannot be that simple, because it should cost a lot of money.
And
Oh, that's a great story.
I have also a question that's more a curiosity. But
Yes.
there is someone that is doing kind of, let's call it business or serious business, but at least business with WebRTC. That is billing, metering.
I didn't hear it, so it could be they are, but I didn't hear it for us. For what we meet the most are these mobile operators, because diameter is hard to do. And recently we were impressed that we get more and more LCR requests, because the LCR, our LCR is very flexible, and we get people interested, and quite some important operator, I cannot say his name, but we are implementing a large product for them, and it was quite impressive to hear, because I will never forget that Daniel asked me in 2016, when I went to Camaillo World and presented our LCR. He asked me, does it make sense to still invest in LCR now when everybody's having flat rates? And then I was telling him, like I will always tell him, it's not only about the specific LCR, but it's always reinventing the strategies you are routing with. So it's not only the money, but quality, but you'll always have routing. And now we are, as you will see, because I wrote something, we are going towards contact center routing, because there is more intelligence, artificial intelligence routing. So it's all about improving or fine-tuning the strategies. So let me just finish. How much time do we actually have?
You will never eat.
Yeah, I love. No, I
with us forever.
Yeah, the thing is that I love this format, because at every conference you will find myself like an engine, which is like touring very fast, and then at some point I finished. Like I always have too much to say. Good. So just few slides about these new features which we have added. So routes was derived from the old suppliers, because as I told you, it became more and more important to have LCR and suppliers, and then we have renamed the module itself and added some more strategies. So right now we have like the classical routing based on weight, based on priority, least cost for the call, or highest cost for the call, if anybody wants to do that. Quality based, like based on ASR, ACD, PDD, and RTP stats. REAS, this is resource ascending. So you route to the supplier which has the least resources in use, the least number of channels, or to the highest, the resource descending, to the supplier who has the most calls, like he's the most popular, so everybody's sending there, and you can do based on the number of channels. and then you can also route based on load. And all this, for example, QoS is also you can combine it with list cost. So you order based on list cost, but take the most priority, the quality based. And we support bundles because from this big provider which we are handling right now, they came with, we had this crazy idea about having a supplier which gives us a certain price for a number of minutes, and then we should send to him the calls, because we want to reach the other layer of minutes, because as soon as you send more minutes, then you change the level. But as soon as we hit the other level, we want to use the other supplier. So this one looked like, for them at least, like a very hard problem to fix. And in CGRateS, this was native, because we have bundles connected to list cost, and then we have two suppliers with the same cost, but the other has higher priority, the one which is attached to bundle. So he will always get the calls because he's still part of the bundle. As soon as he gets out of bundle, then he will not be in routing anymore. And the other, who is lower priority, he will take his place. So it was exactly fixing his problem and plug and play without redesigning or adding any other code inside. So this is what I'm talking about, future of routing, because you can do all these crazy ideas simply by combining this. And then you can have simultaneous routing profiles match with weight prioritization. And then this is what I told about the others. And you get this together with SIP redirects, or the one which I discussed before, or all the other interfaces I was discussing here about. They all get access to the sessions and to the routes behind the sessions. So all this, even diameter agent can give you LCR or radius, or we already have in production enum based, because Acme packets, for example, they do by default enum. I didn't know that they do enum. Or we had another experience. We didn't know how to integrate with SAMS, which is an open source implementation. We work with commercial version, but we didn't know how to integrate because they need to write code for us to talk to CGRate. And then they say, we have enum based routing support in SAMS. And then it was already plug and play. So all these are having access to the same thing, like also Asterix, FreeSwitch, they all have access to these routes now. And as I told you, on roadmap, we see contact center routing or AA within routing strategies, or something which I started long time ago as part of my PhD. Something similar to what you were discussing in the last session, especially you, Giovanni, regarding standard interface for interconnects, inter-operator trunking, and so on. This I started like 10 years ago as my PhD, and you know what happened? My professor told me, "You'll never finish it." You know what? What I do? We do a deal. When you are ready to continue, come back to me, because otherwise you will be always doing something and never something useful for us. So I'll do it at some point.
Cool.
So.
What do you mean by standard interface for interconnects? Are you talking about the SIP interface?
Yeah, so I see it as a cluster for routing. So everybody's publishing their routing, the routes there, and their costs of routing, whether they are cost of money or cost of next hop. Same like BGP.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, this is something we're also thinking about, but it's yeah, Professor is right. I think that's a holy grail that we will never be able to achieve. But yeah, it's worthwhile to try. Maybe you would maybe you would push the way at least in this direction. Yeah,
yes, route should be capable of doing this because it has all the elements. All it needs is a standard way of communicating. So exchanging these routes, like BGP works, it can happen via a daemon within CGRateS, because we have access to stats, we have access to costs. We have access to real-time traffic. So we can then put together few routes modules and exchange from different providers and develop a protocol.
Oh, so definitely keep me updated because being a service provider, we would definitely support you and with a test installation and test interconnects to others. So I would be definitely interested in that.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's about routes, and now the new rates. The existing rates which we have is bulletproof. It works since 2000 and with an architecture of 2010, but we are preparing to replace it. Actually, we already have most of the components developed already. We are changing because right now defining the cost. Please.
No, I was most of the component are already, and Alexander was
He's telling them lies again because
I
how much
do it with that one. So I don't know what's there.
The problem is that Alex is very young and he cannot lie so easily like I do.
Yeah, put the Alex on the spot, Giovanni.
Yeah, if you can blank him or every time I say a lie, he will change his light in his eyes.
Yeah, he didn't develop the poker face yet, so you need to play poker a little more.
So the thing is that we have, I think, 100 issues open on the public, and then we have 200 more opened on private repository of CGRateS. So it's still, we have a lot of ideas, so they never finish. But the RALS is almost there. The idea is that we'll use single file for management. We had this problem that right now we use 5 or 6 files to define the pricing because it's very complex and flexible as well. And we found a way to integrate all the flexibility of these 5 files within one. And not only that, but we use the new filters, which is a dynamic, as I told you. It can you will be able to rate the calls based on the quality also, based on anything. So you can based on your system load, based on anything you like, because anything which will be present in your event, or we will have it in the resource or stats server of ourselves, we can query when putting the price on your event. So it's a dual layer of filters, we say, because we filter in 2 different places. One is for profile and one is for rate itself. So each rate can have its own filters. And before we used to have string-based or prefix strict matching, like only specific fields in the events. Now they will be dynamic. You can do partial changes over APIs or files. This was also requested by our community because right now you need to recompile the whole rating plan, and that's huge. We had, I think, 360 megs of data in one rating plan. Sometimes you have millions of destinations inside. So when you're downloading that you're loading into memory, it's big. So with the new, it's still big, but you can also do partial changes over APIs. The reason we keep it is to be atomic, so not to change components and keep them in sync while you are redesigning your rates. We will have a common interface, because this was another thing from an operator. They were saying, because you have more experience with this, is there a standard pricing between carriers? Because we deal with many wholesale carriers, and each of them with its own format for the pricing. And I said, no, it is not, and it will never be, I think, because it's all about flexibility and business logic within each carrier. So they don't go to common format because they lose their flexibility. And some of them, they define destination in some way. Some of them, they split it. And it's all about yeah, also many platforms like all the new and so on, so they are kind of bounded to different formats. And we try to fix this problem by having a loaders is able to independently load from different places by specifying mapping file, same like you saw in our templates. So you say, I want to take my rate from this file at this index, and then all it needs is to be on the same row in all the files. So then you can merge the files together if they define in multiple files, or you can tell within the same files from different indexes to map it to what you understand. So then you don't need to
By the way,
CGRateS.
this is very useful also for, sorry, there is some noise here.
No, we don't hear it.
Okay. It's very, very important this also because you can get your rating, your, let's say, checkpoint in various points of your architecture, let's say on the SBC and the proxy, on the other SBC, etc. And then you if there are problems or some billing is refused by a customer, you can then check on the various spots, and also if you have a different format, you are able to reconcile all the different origins of billing.
That's correct. Yeah, we are also used as billing assurance in some places. So they use us as parallel source of truth.
That's for sure.
Because it costs them nothing. It's an open source. They can put as many engines they like in various formats, in various prices, and so on.
Well, it still costs something to verify results when they don't agree. It's like,
yeah,
who is right, who is wrong?
That's correct. Okay, so then the CSV I told, we are changing. We used to do float arithmetics, which was in some ways good, some other way bad. What we were doing after each float operation, because floats are sorted to be buggy, we were rounding, and then we avoided the problems. But on many operations, like within the call, you have a lot of points where you rate. As more you are rating, as more rounding problems you are having, because people were imagining the cost per call, but you were doing per increment, and per each increment rounding, but they were rounding per overall call. And then we did some tricks during the sessions. At the end of the session, we were calculating again the cost for the complete call after we have done it per increments, and then we refunded the difference, just to make sure that we are close to or avoid this kind of rounding. So now
Alexandra is crying. It's like
just because we do that calculation twice, I do not like it.
Yeah, well,
so you now use a big integer. I mean, a 64-bit integer.
Yes, they have decimals now, same like Python. Python was very good because Python was having native decimals. In Golang, there is still no native decimals. They didn't agree to a format about an implementation, and someone else developed, like there are already 3-4 good decimal libraries, and we have chosen one of it and we will use it. But when we started, there was no decimal implementation, and it's not an easy task to handle decimals because you have a lot of overfloating, and you need to have the right infrastructure and to have dynamic rounding support and a lot of things. So by now we have found a good decimal, and we will replace float arithmetics with decimals in the new rates. And we have also added, because we have customers coming from A2 billing platform. Like we are always an upgrade for A2 billing. By the way, we respect a lot the guys from A2 billing. They are like dinosaurs of billing.
Oh yeah.
And they came with, because A2 billing has minimum cost, we have to have also. So in CGRateS was always like a trick to do minimum cost, and now it will be native within the rates. So that's the new rate support. And then the last component I'm talking about today is the new event exporter service. I told you it's the mapping of the event reader service. It will be able to export events towards different interfaces. And we used to have like CDR exporter, but now this event exporter, CDR exporter was not that flexible. It was like strictly built. This one is built with the same templates which I showed you, so same mapping. And another advantage is that it doesn't export only CDR, so it will be able to export events from all over the place, including sessions.
So in a way, this I mean, one of the possibility will be to integrate that with as a source of data for Homer, for example.
Yes, well, we already have integration with Homer. They take our CDRs, but
No,
it's
but
this one will give access to real-time events.
They have also not only the CDR but they have also an event engine. So in this way, you can have, for example, your event pump that sends events in a format to the event engine of Homer, and another format, for example, to an anti-fraud alarm system.
Yeah, that's correct. And you define how you export the events, and you can get them now from sessions, for example. So you don't need any more diameter interface. We translate the diameter and then we export the diameter events to you. So you get access to diameter events through CGRateS without having a diameter interconnection.
I see why the cellular carrier are coming to you.
Yeah, because it's flexible. Yeah. So you can monitor then calls in real time from CGRateS in your own web interface.
Talking about web interface, do you have any ideas or plans?
No. So we discussed that with many customers, and we realized they don't want us to do it because everybody's having their own, and it's their own fingerprint, and also most of them are having investors behind, and they like to show their own value, not CGRateS interface, and they will never give CGRateS interface to their customers, and internally they will also like to protect in their own way. So in the end, we have decided we have full API coverage support. If you want a web interface today, you take Postman and you send APIs from Postman, and it works. Or if you want to handle pricing, you have Google Docs. We can import pricing directly from Google Doc. Our loader supports talking to Google Docs. So you already have interfaces like that. And we have console and APIs. Same like, I would say, Chameleon OpenShips without the extra projects which they did. I think we are good at back service.
Yeah.
We'll stay there.
I think it's very
I was discussing with Alex because he said how we are going to do the versioning in the future, and we said it might be that after on this roadmap, after we finish the v0.11, ideally, because we rewrite this pain in the ass components which are old, we might go to a generic, because we had one before, CGRadmin. It's on GitHub. So if we do it, we'll do it in a generic way, but not for the. It was more like we were always saying it's a proof of concept how you should do your own. Mm-hmm. So you can use it to interact with CGRateS, but it will not be like carrier grade style. It will be like an interface, a web interface for I don't know who, but how something like that.
At least a working example of how
Exactly,
it works.
interface. Yeah, and to see how fast the things are communicating. And the CGR admin was already original, because also Angular was new when we wrote CGR admin. And or it was pretty early stages, and it was using this dynamic content of Angular. Like when you were changing something on the top page, it was already changing in the back, in the down, and so on. So it was like a concept we liked to have it in the future.
I think now we will leave to wrap up in 15 minutes, because
we are already done.
almost 2
So
hours.
I calculated in this way.
Oh yeah, cool. So where do we can see you guys in the future? Like any plans, like present where else?
Everywhere. So I think I was discussing with Giovanni around ClueCon. Remember, in April, we kind of knew that no way of flying to US. In the next,
But
at least this year,
this
not.
time they will do that Clucon deconstructed. That is a nice word, and I mean it's a catchy word. I like it, and I will do the talk, but I've not yet understood how is the format.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's online, I mean real time, like this one, or if it is like ComCon that is pre-recorded, then mixed. And actually, I don't know. I will have to check it out. But if I remember correctly, is the first week in August. Also, when we're supposed to speak, so it's probably in real time. I can't guarantee.
So
yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah, what we do normally is we start with FOSDEM, which is in Brussels.
Yeah.
This is what we did at least last year. So it's FOSDEM, OpenShift Summit, Camaillio World, ClueCon, JanusCon, Astricon, and what else? Did I miss anything?
No, let's hope that this year FOSDEM will be back.
Yeah, we have been to FOSDEM this year, so that was the only conference. We have applied. I think both Camaillio and OpenShift were still targeting to have the conference done in September, but I don't think they will open the sites by then.
No,
I don't.
So I doubt that there will be physical attendance to Camaillio and OpenShift Summit. Also, JanusCon, I don't think it will take place because it's the same story.
Janus will be virtual.
Yeah, Janus virtual, and OpenShift most likely will be virtual, but we'll hear about that, I guess.
So I think it's all about next.
Let's hope for FOSDEM. Let's hope
FOSDEM, yes.
Yeah, but even February seems a little bit. Now it seems a little bit iffy.
Yeah, it seems a little bit dangerous.
Especially that.
Like I mean, if it goes, the virus goes up now, or at least still staying up. I mean, imagine like September, October, November, like cold months.
So let's aim for the next ClueCon and OpenShift Summit in the world in spring, late spring. Well, one more thing I wanted to show you regarding export interfaces is that.
Can you show your screen then?
Am I not showing it? No.
No.
That's the last idea, and then I'll just conclude. So before exporting, you can use attributes to change the data. So even the events which you are getting from diameter or something, you can modify them via attributes before sending it to you. So you can add, for example, your account to them, because the account relies in CGRateS, or the account value. So you know when you are receiving this event, how much money you had into his account or something. And then you get multiple interfaces. So you get file CSV, file fixed width value, HTTP post, HTTP JSON map, AMQP JSON map,
Wow.
AMQP version 1, because they have, I think Amazon is using different version of AMQP from, this one is before the start, the RabbitMQ was before version 1, and Amazon was having after version 1. Then SQS of Amazon, Kafka, and S3. So we support all these interfaces already. Especially this Kafka stuff, it's they like it. It's in US especially, it should be all cloud based, and then you have to be plug and play and compatible to all these hosted interfaces. And like you see here, this is how you define an exporter. So you can completely overwrite all the things, including different format, different time zone, the cost, round it, and you can modify before sending it out. Yeah.
Cool. Question about that. So what is your kind of customer base? Is it like has any particular geographical location, or is it just all over the place?
Yeah. So the most customers, I would say, it's Europe and US, but it started being popular Middle East, and lately we even reached Singapore. So it starts going into Middle East, Asia, and it's developing in that region. But
Cool.
of course, commercials, they were always more ready for Europe and US.
Yeah.
And I see here PCRF's IMS related component. Could you elaborate more on that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so we got recently a project where it was, we come natively as OCS to work with PCRF. PCRF needs to be informed by OCS when the balance is finished, so it can decrease. It's quite popular nowadays, also in Germany. When your bundle is finished, you still have data, but with another speed. And PCRF is the component enforcing speed limiting. So this is why for us it's quite natively to add the PCRF component within CGRateS, because we had a project which was asking for PCRF, especially it was a question mark, and we could not go forward because we didn't have PCRF. So we plan adding to CGRateS the PCRF component.
Yeah, and maybe a different issue, but in Europe, or especially in Germany, the A-based charging will get introduced, especially for the numbers outside of Europe. So there'll be. Yeah, I know, but I was just trying to tell that there might be a new wave of opportunities, because there could be some billing systems that will not be able to support it, or not in the full range. So there might be some additional opportunities, because this is at least especially for the fixed operators, this would be something new that we haven't had before. So yeah.
Yeah, well, we added in 2015, I think, the A-based, and by that time they say it's coming. So it's 5 years later now.
I know it's definitely, because we are also involved in Germany in these WACA groups that define interfaces, and there are lots of discussion regarding this, and it will get introduced this year, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
What is A-based?
So you are not charging just based on the destination, the price, but also based on the origination. So it's kind of racist. Racist billings, it's called.
Yeah, but it's basically there are some countries that charge you more when the calls are, or at least they charge more as compared to other countries, and extremely more. We're not talking about like percent, but like twice, 3 times, 4 times that it's usual. And people are getting upset about it, and they want to reflect on that. So it's basically it's like an arms race in regarding this billing or charging. But now Europe tried, or at least in Germany, it was a little bit delayed. But now there are more and more countries that are pushing these charges, especially for if you call on to mobile destination in those countries, then the charges are just unreasonable. And this is something they want to reflect and do the same. If you come from those countries, you will have to pay also more. And yeah, that's an unfortunate situation, but it's yeah, it's definitely coming.
No, I can see. I can see that. I mean, that's will probably be. I mean, with the, let's say, kind of failure of globalization and more tariffs, dumping tariffs, and all this kind. Yeah, that seems to be a real market space.
You know, I have a real life example regarding this. When you go to restaurant, and depending on which language the menu is, the pricing is different. It happens. Like, I know countries where this happens. So if it's native language, you have some price, and in another language, like an English menu, costs more.
That's also an IQ test.
Yeah. I got a question for you then. So what are you guys looking? Are you looking for something like other than voice over IP billing application? I mean, you built a quite extensive engine, I would say. Like, any other areas that you would
Yes.
be
So
willing to apply it to?
the new rates, and also the accounting, even existing but also in the future, will target anything. So if you want to sell cars or CPU cycles or virtual machine cycles or events, you know, I was called once by DHL in US, and they wanted to charge the data based on the time it takes to send it or something like this. So it's all sort of billing related stuff generically. So we support the new rates addresses that perfectly. So it will be IoT, it will be like virtualization, it can be electricity, it can be anything you like to be, because in the future more and more services will make bundles. So this is what accounting of CGRateS will target. So depending on your car arriving in the garage at some specific point in time, electricity costs less or more, plugging in, consuming it, and so on. So it will be like this kind of policies.
Yeah, that's interesting, because definitely we're going more and more into not just a simple charges, but those bundled, more complicated things. And also, well, basically, this should be the way forward. If you can measure it, you can rate it, you can charge it, you can bill it. So you have the flexibility to do it. So yeah, that's a great idea. Absolutely.
This is what the rates is doing, and same what accounts is doing in our case. But what we noticed in many cases, we were too much ahead compared to the market. So the market was moving so slow, like 8 billion.
Oh yeah, well, if you look at
implemented.
Communication industry, it's very slow.
But you saw how fast or how much Corona helped communication evolve.
Oh yeah, it did.
Digitalization everywhere. Yeah. It was fantastic. Like, we did progress like in 10 years. We did it in few months. So we proved that it's possible. Like, the human race, it needs to be like driven with force.
That's true. That's true. But for example, I mean, the same fact that I'm now, I mean, really in a little village in the mountains, and it all works.
Yes, and think about, I know so many people, for example, my German teacher, she never saw a Zoom before, and now she is very native in Zoom because or video calling. She didn't know how to use computer, but they told her from tomorrow you need to do online. You do it or you need to quit. So then after night she knew it. So this is digitalization. We went through fast.
Okay, more Corona.
Yeah.
Better Corona.
I saw that they are preparing now another version of this Schwein virus.
Yeah.
Pig virus in China. They are already discussing about it.
but yeah, yes, you're right. I got the same feeling, like especially governments and all that. But in general, like public, like institution, adapted the technology pretty much
Guys,
overnight.
time to wrap up. We passed the 2 hour.
Yeah.
Man,
Just say you're hungry.
I was thinking half an hour. What can I say in half an hour? But with you guys, it's always a pleasure. So
I'll
Yeah,
hopefully
this is
not
the
the last time.
idea. Exactly. And this is the idea of the format, to give time, because otherwise everyone feels under pressure to present stuff. And as you said, and then you're just breathing out and it's gone. And we wanted to have a little bit more time, a little bit more elaborative on some issues, and just have a little bit more fun just presenting straight ahead into the public.
But also go more in deep. I mean, this time, Dan and Alexandru have had the time to go in deep and really explain things. And I mean, in the normal format that is 20, 25 minutes, I mean, when you have, I mean, laid down the basics of the things, you present yourself, present the company, present the project. I mean, you give some basic things. More or less, the real presentation is like 5 minutes, 7 minutes. How much you can say in that? I
yeah,
mean, with I mean, in 2 hours, you really are able to explain things and make me, I mean, going out with so much more knowledge and also, I mean, pleasure.
yeah. Always will be always happy to come back. So please invite me again. Or
Well,
us.
I'll say it. I'll say Giovanni. We will, obviously, will. Well, one day we will meet again.
Sure, that's definitely.
It's just the question when, I guess. Not if.
Okay, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
again, and yeah, enjoy the 4th of July again. Happy 4th of July, or
Yeah,
US viewers.
incredible. We did it in an important time.
Yeah.
Bye.
And we'll be
Let's
back.
go.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a
Bye.
good weekend. Bye.